So I'll wait to Latin 1 students, welcome back. Hope you guys had a great weekend this weekend and felt good about the quiz on Friday. Today we need to start the next chapter. This next chapter is a big one. It's a very important one. It's the last little part of the third declension nouns here, and it's something called the I stem, which is a special part of the third declension. But I'm not going to explain that quite yet. I'm going to go over the vocabulary with you guys today. And what you're seeing here is the Quizlet, and I've already shared these guys with you, this set with you, so you can go on Quizlet and begin preparing and studying right away for your vocabulary for this next chapter. All these words are, most of them are something called third declension I stem words, but again, once I give you the notes tomorrow, I'll explain what that means in detail. But it's definitely a chapter to work hard on, to be ready for, and to come in and see me if you have any questions on, because it is a big chapter for the third declension. So what I'm going to do today is go over each of these words and tell you what the derivatives might be of these words. So those are sometimes something I ask on the quiz as a derivative, right? So you want to make sure you get this down in your vocab tab, but also get the derivatives for each of these words, okay? Vocab, not too hard, but there are some really important common words here. The first word is animal, animalis, neuter, meaning animal. So hopefully that'll be a pretty easy one to remember because it looks a lot like the word, what the word is in English. You can tell this word is third declension because it ends in is, right? Is is right there. But again, I'll explain what this I stem means to you tomorrow in the notes, okay? So that's coming up. But no, these are third declension words. You can see that right there. What's a derivative of animal? Well, you can probably see a very obvious one. Animal is a derivative here, anything having to do with animals. Sometimes when you're in biology or science and they'll talk about the kingdoms, sometimes they'll use the Latin names of kingdoms like plants and animals. The Latin name for kingdoms is animalia, because that's the plural of this word here. So that's another derivative you might see in your science class. So that's a neuter word. Make sure to note the gender of each of these words. The next word you'll see here is civis, civis, which is masculine or feminine, meaning citizen. So meaning citizen. Now, we've had very few words. Most of them cannot be masculine or feminine. What does this mean? Well, it means a citizen is a person, right? And so if you know you're talking about a citizen who is a woman, then that word civis would act as a feminine word. If it's a man, it would act as a masculine word. If you don't know and you're just saying the citizens of Rome did this or something, you would assume it's a masculine word. That's just how the language works. But if you know you're talking about females or a woman, then this word would act as a feminine word. What words do you see coming from civis here? By the way, notice how the nominative gender are the same. That happens sometimes. The base does always come from the genitive, but sometimes they're the same. Civis, civis. Okay, so some derivatives here would be like civil, having to do with your other citizens would be civil. Maybe civilization could be a good derivative here, right? Civilize, if you civilize someone, you make them fit into a society. And those are some good derivatives there. You could probably think of a few more. I don't know if I'm doing all these exhaustively. I don't want to give you too many, but I'm just giving you some. The next word is finis, finis, masculine. And this word is one of those words that has a different meaning in the singular versus the plural. So in the singular, this word means end or boundary. And in the plural, this word means territory. So that's one thing to watch out for here. The finis, finis. So what's a good derivative of this masculine third declension I stem word? Well, you think of a boundary of something. Would be like finish, like the finish line. That's a good derivative here. Finite means something that can have a boundary, right? Finite means it doesn't go on forever. It has an end, it has a boundary. So those are a couple good derivatives here for finis. Let's see, the next word here is gens, gentis, feminine, which means family, clan, or nation. Notice how some of these third declension words are feminine, some are masculine, some are neuter. There's all three genders involved here. So gens, gentis is a family, a clan, or a nation. And some derivatives here would be, there's a few. Gentile would be one. That might be a word you don't use all the time, but maybe a word you might see in the Bible or something. In biblical times, Gentiles refer to someone who is not Jewish. So you were Jewish on one side, but a non-Jew, what's called a Gentile. That's one you might see. Let's see. I took some notes here. I'm trying to remember any other good derivatives of gens, gentis. Yeah, gentle is also a derivative. Gentle, someone who is gentle with you, gentle with things would be another good derivative here. And let's go on to the next one, which is hostis. This word is super common because Rome had a lot of enemies. Hostis, hostis, masculine, meaning enemy. Basically meaning enemy. The reason it says public enemy here is because hostis is not the word you would use for like this guy's my enemy, I don't get along with him well. This would be a word that you would use for like an enemy of the state. Rome was fighting against the Carthaginians or something. That is more of hostis. Okay, so that's why it says public enemy, but it's fine for you just to translate like enemy. Okay. Um, Now, some derivatives here from hostis, hostis meaning enemy. You probably see a few. Think of maybe hostile, someone your enemy, you're hostile with them. Maybe hostage, if I'm mistaken. Hostility could be another good derivative here. When you're not getting along with someone well, hostility is a good derivative here. Going on to ignis is the next one. Ignis, ignis, masculine, third declension isonym, meaning fire, right? And hopefully that doesn't look too surprising as fire to you. Some derivatives here for ignis. You probably see some if you're just thinking about it before I even say these. But ignite would be one. If you ignite something, you light it on fire. Ignition, like in a car, that little spark that makes the car start. Igneous, if you're talking about igneous rock, it's rock that's been lit to very high temperatures, lit on fire. Usually igneous rock is associated with like volcano, lava that's turned into rock and hardened after time. I think it's called igneous rock from what I remember. So igneous is another derivative there. That's IGNEOUS as well. So that's a word we're going to see sometimes. The next word is common, mare, maris, neuter meaning sea. The reason we'll see this word a lot is because the Romans, of course, were surrounded by sea, being right there in the Mediterranean. And when we did our geography lesson, I even told you about the word for the Mediterranean Sea. They didn't call it that. They called it Mare Nostrum, which meant our sea. So we've actually seen this word just briefly one time. But notice how this word is neuter. Not a lot of third declension isonym neuter words, but I think there's only two in this chapter. All the rest are masculine and feminine. What's a good derivative for mare? Think about the sea, right? So you might have like marine life means like ocean life. Marina, maybe where you go to boats and things like that, or in the marina. Those are a couple ideas. Maria, the female name, would be a form of this word, would be a derivative of this word. So quite a few derivatives here. I think the word mare, maybe you guys can check me on this. I kind of remember this also being, if you look up at the moon, you'll see these large, like really super large craters. They almost look like seas, and I'm pretty sure they call those mare in astronomy, right? And they use the Latin word there. They're not actually filled with water, of course, but they just kind of look like large seas, so they're called mare, I believe so. That's a word we'll see a lot. The next one is mons montis, masculine, meaning mountain or a hill. And some derivatives here would be mountain, would be a derivative here. Mount, like you're talking about Mount Everest or something, that would be a derivative here. Mountainous would be an adjective that's a derivative here. So an area is mountainous, has a lot of mountains to it. So quite a few derivatives from mons montis. I'm pretty sure they also use the word mons to describe mountains or volcanoes on other planets. Just going back to astronomy, we were looking at here. I could have sworn there was a volcano on Mars that had this word in. I'm sorry to do this during the video, but I was trying to see if I find it. Ooh, there is. There's a volcano on Mars called Olympus Mons. Olympus Mons. That's pretty cool. So I just want to confirm that before I told that to you. So this is a word sometimes they use on other planets to describe their mountains or volcanoes. The next word is mors mortis, feminine meaning death, as you can see here, mors mortis. So this word's feminine, kind of interesting, and some derivatives here. Think of anything having to do with death. You might see like mortician, the person who prepares the body. Maybe morgue, if you go to the city morgue, it's where they keep a body after death. There's a couple good derivatives here of mors. There was even the Roman god of death, not Pluto, who was the god of like the underworld, but the actual god of death was called Mors as well. His name in Greek mythology was Thanatos. So we have mors. The next word is nawis. Nawis, feminine meaning ship. And so this word, feminine, kind of interesting. Sometimes we think about ships as feminine nowadays too. In English, we don't have genders per se, but sometimes we just kind of loosely associate something. Usually when you name a ship, if you see a ship with like a person's name, it's usually a feminine name, just for some reason. So sometimes we have an association with feminine for ships too. What about some derivatives from nawis? Think about things having to do with ships or sailing. You might have navy coming from this would be one. Naval might be a good derivative for this one. Of course, the navy is made up of many ships. What was the Roman Navy like? Well, it was pretty non-existent for the first few hundred years that Rome was around. Actually, for the first almost 500 years, because Rome had just always existed in central Italy. It had never needed to sail very much. And once they got into a war with the people called the Carthaginians, who had a really strong navy, Rome had to get their navy going at that point. So it wasn't until the Second Punic War that Rome started to have a real navy. They got ships built and they started becoming sailors and they tried to catch up to the Carthaginians. But for the longest time, the Roman navy was essentially non existent because they didn't need one right there in Italy. So there's Nahus and a few words there. The next word is pons pontus, masculine meaning bridge. This is a good one. Of course, Rome had a lot of bridges because remember what river was running right through it? You had the Tiber River, right? So some derivatives from pons pontus would be pontoon. A pontoon is a type of bridge that's kind of floating, a pontoon bridge. It's not a permanent bridge. You would not make a pontoon a permanent bridge because it's not super stable. But let's say you just quickly needed to cross a river or something, they might make a pontoon bridge, even sometimes by um, joining boats together, and so you can kind of walk over them and cross the bridge. Again, it's a temporary, not a super stable thing, but that's the pontoon bridge. We had one of our customs words called Pontifex Maximus. If you remember when we did mythology, that was the chief priest of the Roman religion. That word actually comes from Pons. Pontifex means bridge builder. So the word Pontifex literally meant he was the one building the bridge from humanity to the gods, Pontifex Maximus. And I might have mentioned to you at the time, but there's still someone with the title of Pontifex Maximus if you go to Italy, and that is the Pope. That's one of the Pope's official titles, even all these years later, is Pontifex Maximus. Okay. The next word here, pons pontus, we'll come back to that one at some point in this chapter. Urbs urbis, feminine. This one's common, meaning city. It's a feminine I stem word. And this would be bigger than oppidum. We've already learned oppidum, right, which means town. This one's a little bit bigger, urbs urbis, city. And so a derivative here would be like urban. If something's in the city, it's urban. Urbane means kind of witty, cultured is another word that comes from this. It looks like urban, but it has an E on the end of it. Suburb is a word that would come from this. Suburbs means you don't live in the city, but remember what does sub mean? It means under or at the foot of. So the suburbs are not right in the city, but they're kind of on the outskirts of the city. That's why they're called suburbs. They're on the foot of the city. So suburb is another derivative here for urbs, urbis. Of course, urbs would be a bigger thing than oppidum. City is bigger than a town. Panis panis is the next word here, meaning bread. Panis panis is masculine. And I've mentioned this before, but bread was just kind of the thing that most people subsisted off of more than anything else. Grain was subsidized by the government, and meat and vegetables and things like that were very expensive. So people didn't eat those nearly as much as we do nowadays. So that's why bread and the word grain are very important words. If you wanted to make chaos in ancient Rome, you would attack their grain supply because that would cause the people to freak out when there's not enough grain to go around. The government doesn't have enough grain, and there'd be riots and all sorts of things. What about some derivatives here, though, for the word panis? Well, think about where you might keep your bread in your house. The pantry. Yeah, pantry is a word that comes from this. Kind of an interesting one, not necessarily, but you might keep it in the pantry, right? There's a restaurant that comes from this. Panera bread, right? Panera, maybe you go to Panera sometimes. And if you think about it, Panera means bread, so Panera bread kind of means bread. I don't know if you ever thought about that. Another word I found that I didn't know came from this, but I was just kind of looking this up before I talked to you guys here, is empanada. The Mexican food empanada comes from this. Kind of interesting. It makes perfect sense because Spanish comes from Latin as well. So that's panis. And the next one here, the last one is nox noctis, feminine, which means night. So here's the word for night, nox noctis. And I will explain this word. I'll give you some example of this word tomorrow. I want to give you the notes and everything. But this word does mean night, and it's feminine. And some derivatives of this word would be like nocturnal. If an animal is awake primarily at night, they're called nocturnal rather than us being awake during the day. Another word that comes from this would be equinox. It's that day that happens a few times a year where the night and day are equal in length, basically. So that's why it's called equinox. Yeah. So if I look at these words, I'm just thinking how many of these words are really, really common Latin words. These are not words that are going to be throwaway words. These are words we're going to be seeing on a common basis throughout the rest of the year, and also in Latin too as well. So I'm giving these to you today, so you can go ahead and start learning your vocab. You learn those up front. It makes the chapter so much easier to learn and easier to deal with. So today I'm going to leave you guys with the vocab, and then tomorrow I'll separate it and give you the notes for the next chapter, for this chapter, chapter 16. Okay. Hope you guys are doing very well. If there's anything about these words you didn't quite get or need some help or just want to discuss them with me, feel free to drop by my office hours. But I want you to be kind of focused in already on the next test on chapter 16. It will be kind of one of our bigger ones of the year. This chapter is, there's a lot to it that I'll explain to you tomorrow in the notes, okay? Hope you guys have an excellent day, and I will get back to you very soon. Walete.